Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over some severe weather which is currently going on in parts of the northeast and mid-Atlantic, and eventually we're going to see that spread out over much of the northeast and mid-Atlantic. So right now we just have a few cells in parts of New England, New York, and Pennsylvania, but eventually that will continue to spread on throughout the night. We're also going to be in the beginning part of this video talking about three systems that are currently in the Atlantic. We have Tropical Depression 2, which is expected to become a tropical storm over the next couple of days, and I believe the name would be Bill or Bob. So it's one of the B names there that it would be named, and then we have another one down in the Gulf of Mexico, and one more that we're tracking just off the coast of Africa. So we're gonna be talking about that, and especially in tomorrow's video, we're gonna have pretty much an entire recap of all of the tropical storms that are currently in the Atlantic. So we're gonna have a tropical update for tomorrow, but today, because we have the severe weather, this is going to be taking the majority of the attention. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. As you can see, we have some excessive heat warnings, and that's in that kind of purple shade in parts of Utah, Nevada, California, and Arizona. We could be seeing a few temperatures getting up near 125. In these areas, we have a few more excessive heat warnings in eastern Montana and parts of Wyoming. We have a few heat advisories in a little bit of Montana, parts of New Mexico, scattered throughout Nevada, and then also in another area for Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi. We have some excessive heat watches in this dark red for parts of California, and then some red flag warnings in the pink color for parts of Nevada and Utah, as well as for a little bit of Montana. We have those tropical storm warnings off the shore of the Northeast, and that is because of Tropical Depression 2, which is expected to become our next tropical storm and our next named storm. This would be the second named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season so far, and then we have that other one in the Gulf of Mexico, which will probably become our third named storm. And then you have severe thunderstorm watches currently up in parts of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio, and that's going to be what we're going to be talking about for the majority of today's video. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 116 degrees in Death Valley, California, and a low temperature of 24 degrees in Peter Sinks, Utah. The highest rainfall report was roughly 3 inches in Huntsville, Alabama, but all throughout parts of the southeast, we had some scattered rainfall yesterday. So here's a look at the National Hurricane Center page. Again, we're going to briefly go over this. Over the next 5 days, we have a low chance of development in just off the coast of Africa, although we already do have a little bit of spin, so they did mark off an area that we have some spin, and eventually this will continue to move further to the west. We're now starting to get more into the tropical season. We're now starting to see most of the high amounts of dust which we had over this area right here that was in the atmosphere that was preventing storms from developing. Now all that is actually heading into the United States. You're not going to really notice it, but it will move out of the way, so now these storms can actually start to develop a little bit more. We have that higher chance in the southern and western Gulf of Mexico. This might make a run closer to Texas or Louisiana, so we're going to continue to watch this. Again, tomorrow's video will have updates on all three of these systems, and we're going to be talking about that in a little bit more in depth. And then we have Tropical Depression 2, which is just off the shore of North Carolina, rapidly developed. We were not expecting this to actually form into anything. If I'm not mistaken, this was the same system that was in parts of Georgia and South Carolina, and then moved off the shore and became the tropical development that it is right now. And you're going to see that this is expected to actually develop into a tropical storm. So here's the National Hurricane Center path for this storm, and you can see it is expected to take a northeast track into parts of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, but it will actually make a track just to the south of there. So we're not expecting any on-land impacts, but if you do live along the shore, or if you are expected to go to the beach, or if you want to go to the beach, probably not the best a couple days to do it. Probably wait until this upcoming weekend when this should all be out of here, just because rip currents could be an issue for today, tomorrow, maybe even lingering into parts of Wednesday if you live in southeastern Canada. But You can see it is expected to become a tropical storm quite quickly, probably over the next couple of hours. If we look at Invest 92L, that's the one that's in the Gulf of Mexico. This is expected to be a tropical storm, and we might even approach a Category 1 weak hurricane. So we're going to have to continue to watch this. We have seen that most of these storms have actually gone a little bit above what we were expecting in terms of intensity. So we were expecting, especially with that first system, maybe that just becomes a tropical depression, but it ended up becoming our first tropical storm and our first named storm. So they have outperformed by about 10 miles per hour with the wind intensity. We're going to have to see whether that trend keeps up and whether we're going to go above and beyond what we're expecting. Maybe we get into that high-end tropical storm status or that Category 1 status. But you can see as of now, there's fairly good agreement that we're at least going to get this into the tropical storm status within the next 2 to 3 days. So we'll at least have that name knocked off the list, whether that would be the B or C name, depending on which storm gets named first. And then again, we might even run up near Category 1 status. That is going to be all dependent on a few different factors that we're going to be discussing in tomorrow's video. So tomorrow's video is going to have a lot of information, mostly just on these tropical developments. And looking at what the current radar looks like, you can see that we do have a couple pockets of storms. So we have one that's up in northwestern Pennsylvania. I'm recording this around 12:15 p.m. Eastern time. So this is when this is valid for, when this radar image is valid for. So if you want to, you can definitely go on the National Weather Service website and get the latest radar grab, because this is, of course, probably going to be dated by the time that you guys watch this. We have a little bit more thunderstorm activity, mostly just rain in parts of southeastern New England, and even a few storms starting to pop up in parts of New York and Vermont. But our main line is what's happening up here, and that's going to be heading south and eastward over the next few hours. Here is the first mesoscale discussion that we have for today. They're talking about potentially some damaging winds and severe hail, which is going to be possible within this region right here. And they say watch issuance is likely. That was from a couple hours ago, and now they have actually updated this, and they do have a watch up. Here's what the watch looks like. You can see it covers much of western Pennsylvania, a little bit of northern West Virginia, and a little bit of southeastern Ohio. We have a low risk of tornadoes, a very low risk of EF2 plus tornadoes. So tornadoes not really the main risk with this. Wind is going to be the bigger risk. So we have a moderate risk of severe wind, a low risk of seeing 74 mile per hour plus wind. We have a low risk of severe hail and a low risk of 2-inch plus hail. So of course you could see a little bit of small hail here and there, but it's not expected to be anything that's going to be too crazy. This was issued at 11:45 a.m. Eastern time, and it should expire by 6 p.m. unless they decide to extend this watch, and I would not be surprised if that watch is extended a little bit further east, might even cross into parts of Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey. So we're gonna have to really watch for that. Here's what the Storm Prediction Center page looks like for today. You can see that on the day one outlook for later today, we have a slight risk, which covers much of southern Pennsylvania, a little bit of Ohio, West Virginia, and Virginia as well. We have much of Maryland, much of Delaware, and much of New Jersey also covered within this slight risk, and then a marginal risk, which covers the rest of the eastern Ohio Valley, much of the mid-Atlantic, and then even down into parts of the Carolinas as well. So that's what the day one outlook looks like. If we look at the tornado risks, you can see that we have a 2% risk of tornadoes in parts of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, and then also into Delaware and New Jersey. But again, it's a low risk where maybe we can see a couple funnel clouds, but I would be really surprised if we get any developed or very strong tornadoes. I think this is going to be mostly just a hail and wind event. We're not really expecting too much in the way of strong or severe tornadoes with this. Here's the hail outlook, and you can see we have just a general 5% risk. So again, hail is not going to be a huge issue, although I do think some small hail is possible, and that covers much of the mid-Atlantic and even into parts of the Northeast as well. And then if we look at the day one wind outlook, you can see that we have a 15% chance of wind damage within that slight risk zone, within that yellow zone that you see on the screen, which goes from Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania all the way to the coast. So And that is the Storm Prediction Center's forecast. Now let's start looking at the Futurecast radar, and this is just going to be kind of timing this out for you guys. So this would be right about when I'm recording this, or actually a few, maybe about half an hour before I'm recording this. So this is around 12 p.m. Eastern time, what the models expecting the radar is looking like. And we see on the radar, at the actual radar, it's already more developed than this. So anything that you see on the NAM, probably multiply that by 1.5, and that'll probably be more accurate. It's probably going to be 1.5 times stronger than what you're seeing on the NAM model. The NAM does have a weaker version of this. I'm not seeing why that's happening, because considering what we see on the actual radar right now, it is much stronger than what the NAM is actually showing on the forecasted radar. So I would say the NAM is probably lowballing this. You probably want to kind of go on the high end of what the NAM is showing, because it has been kind of underestimating some of these severe weather events so far. You can see some of that rain and just scattered showers in and around Lake Erie, and then as we go to 3 p.m., that line of storms does develop, and then we get it mainly rolling through central and western Pennsylvania, but it is going to be making a general southeastward track over the next couple of hours. If you live in upstate New York, maybe Vermont and western Massachusetts, we could be dealing with a few thunderstorms. Sorry for the dog barking in the background. Then as we go to 6 p.m., you're going to see a few more storms. So we have a northern line right up near upstate New York, and then through Pennsylvania and West Virginia, we have the southern end of this line. So that's where we're going to probably deal with, on the southern end, the bulk of the severe weather. That's where you might be dealing with a little bit more of maybe one scattered tornado, and then maybe a little bit of weak hail, but we're not expecting anything that's going to be too severe. And then as we go to 9 p.m., we have most of these storms breaking up. They might resurge right as they hit into areas of eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland. Within this zone right here, they might kind of strengthen in again. We might see that because we have elevated Cape and dew points and temperatures within this area. So it might redevelop right in and along the mid-Atlantic / northeast coast as we go to right around 9 to 12 a.m. So 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. tonight. You can see that line of storms fairly robust into areas of southern upstate New York, Long Island, down through New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. That would be by 12 a.m. tonight, and then by 3 a.m., mostly just a fairly weak line heading into the coastal areas. So if you live in coastal New Jersey or Delaware, and then if you live further inland of there, it's probably just going to be a plain rain on the back end of these storms. If we look at what the current rainfall forecast looks like, we're seeing a few elevated numbers, especially closer to the coast, and then another patch in through parts of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio, and then maybe actually some fairly high numbers in through southern Quebec and southern Ontario. So if you live up in Canada, you could also be seeing a few pockets of maybe an inch or two, but a general half an inch to an inch is expected over many of these areas. So it's not going to be a ton of rainfall, but if you do get stuck in one of those clusters of storms, we could potentially have a little bit of flooding issues, especially in areas that don't have good drainage with these events. If we look at the CAPE numbers, a way of measuring the amount of energy in the atmosphere, you can see that heightened area, which kind of corresponds with exactly where the line of storms is. So this would be at 4 p.m. today, and you can see that we have some fairly high numbers, 1,000 to about 2,500 in these areas, which for the Northeast, because of the high amount of temperature difference that we're seeing today, where we have some 60s further to the north and 80s further to the south, you don't need a lot of CAPE to really get these storms going. So in an environment like the Northeast or Ohio Valley or the Great Lakes, pretty much the same rule applies. You don't need as high of a CAPE as you do in the southern states, because in the Southeast, typically you don't have huge temperature differentials. Usually the entire area is within, let's say, the 80s or the 90s. In an area like the Northeast or Great Lakes, you usually have some areas in the 60s and other areas in the 80s, especially in the summertime. So you can get a lot more with less severe ingredients in the atmosphere. So you have Cape Valley is between about 1500 and 2500, especially further to the further and closer to the coast. You can see that further inland we also do have some elevated numbers. You can see why we do have those storms developing right in and along this corridor right here, because we have those elevated Cape values. And then if we look at the high temperatures, the temperature difference, like I was saying, we have temperatures into the 70s and 60s further to the north, even just into New England. And then you go further to the south into Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and we're into the low or mid 80s. So you can definitely tell that we do have somewhat of a temperature differential, and that can really help these storms spawn up. If you look into the Ohio Valley, we have that same temperature differential. You have 80s and even 90s to the south, and then you go up into Michigan, Ontario, into parts of New York and northwestern Pennsylvania, and we're into the low 70s, maybe even a couple upper 60s. So you can definitely tell why we do have that temperature differential in these areas. If we look at the dew points, we also do have rather high dew points. They're into the 60s and even some low 70s, especially again within this pocket right in here, where I think maybe a resurgence in these storms is possible, just because all the ingredients are kind of maxed out within that area from New Jersey on southward. So we could potentially see that line of storms break up as it's heading through central Pennsylvania and through the elevated regions, and then as it heads into the coastal plain, potentially strengthening once more. And then if we look at the amount of precipitable water, which is a way of measuring how much liquid is in the atmosphere at any one given point, you can see these values are mostly confined to the coast, where we have values maybe up near an inch and a half in some of these areas. So these are rather high, and that's why we have these storms developing in these areas. So again, tomorrow I'm really excited because we will have, I believe, one of our second or third tropical updates of the season. We're going to go through the satellite imagery, just kind of taking you through all three of these storms, and who knows, by tomorrow we might even have a fourth storm to talk about. So we're going to have a lot of stuff in tomorrow's video. Make sure you are staying tuned, subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's video, and also make sure you have your notifications turned on, because I upload daily, and if you don't have your notifications turned on, sometimes YouTube won't give you the notification when my videos when my videos are actually uploaded. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.